Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I want to talk about reading patterns. This month it's February. If you didn't know, shortest month that year. Even in a leap year, you're missing 2 days. I haven't read anything. Well, that's a lie. I had not read anything at the start of the month, and then the second week of the month I chose to read my own book, An Heir to Murder, because it had been out for a year and I wanted to do a retrospective, so I did that. We looked back, I talked about it, 2-part video, fantastic, great stuff, go watch it. I still continued not to read. I was reading, but I wasn't finishing anything. This is also the month in which I'm supposed to be reading books for the Booktube prize, and I bought them all. I had them sat here on the dressing table and I wasn't reading anything. And this was making me sad. It was making me sad in that way that not writing makes me sad. I get this sort of anxious, fractious energy and I don't know what to do with myself. And then I start to feel overwhelmed because I haven't read anything, but I've got so much that I want to read. Also, being part of Booktube, I feel like I should be reading stuff so that I have a wrap up at the end of the month and I'm able to share this and talk about books. But then I also feel like everything should be on a certain type of theme, and people have been seeing the books that I have been reading, so they'll be looking to see how long it takes me to read that book. So obviously that capitalism doesn't seem like such a big pain in the neck, and also to make sure I actually do read things. And, you know, I mentioned liking Elizabeth Taylor, so Elizabeth Taylor's been on my mind a lot recently because I think I should be reading the books of hers that I purchased. Then I have the 47 Anthony Trollope books. So there I was, feeling a certain type of way, and I slowly started to get books read. I was reading 100 pages every night of books for the Booktube prize, and so I read one book for the Booktube prize, and that was in the 3rd week of February. And then I read another book for the Booktube prize. I was thinking maybe it's a reading slump. I was thinking maybe even it's depression. It's some sort of sadness that is keeping me from reading. Because my writing has slowed down as I try and write this sad scene, and I've been writing this flaming sad chapter for ages now, but do know it's just because it's a very long chapter. It's not because I'm not writing. I always feel like I've got to add that there as well now. I feel like I'm constantly having to explain myself. Nobody's asking me to explain myself, but I often end up feeling like I have to explain myself to the people on YouTube in this internet sphere as to why I'm not reading so much and why I'm not writing so much, because that is who they know me to be. One thing I do at the end of every month is I look in my reading journal, and I'm trying to really beat myself. I say I should never be in competition with who I was in a previous year, but I often find that I am in competition with who I was in a previous year. Last night I chose to go back and look at how many books I read in February 2020. That is because after not really knuckling down, but after trying to make my reading have some sort of routine, so taking my book downstairs or reading it in bed until I'd read 100 pages a day, I have now managed to read 6 books this month, which to me doesn't seem like a lot. And I'll admit that 3 of those books have been this week, just because I woke up early one day and I just felt like reading, so I read a rather short 150-page book. From reading these 6 books, I chose to go back and look what I'd read last year. And in February 2020, I read 8 books. And I couldn't do a wrap-up in February last year because I was taking part in the Booktube prize, which is the same thing that has happened this year. Then I chose to go back this morning and I looked at how many books, so I won't go to when I started this journal, although I should because I didn't read much then either. But if we go from when I first started here, I read 3 books in February 2016. And the reason behind that was because of the period of unfathomable sadness. We look again at 2017. And in 2017, I had a really good reading month in January because I decided to set the year off right. But then in the February, I read 9 books, and I quite like to hit 10 books a month. That seemed like a good number for me. 10 is where I aim for. I still didn't hit my target. I set myself, by the way. In 2018, I only read 7 books in February. And then we come to 2019. Now, 2019 is the month that I don't know why I hold it to such esteem, because I entered 2019 with a concussion after falling off a ladder and cracking my head open. And then once I'd got over that, towards the end of January, start of February, I developed a throat infection. So basically, I thought I'd got a bit of laryngitis, and I decided to ignore it and decided to try and fix it myself with hot drinks and ice lollies. Then I lost my voice and I kept getting sent home from work. So I decided what I was going to do was I was going to go to the doctor, and the doctor was going to tell me that everything was fine and work would let me back. Well, what happened was I ended up giving this throat infection to a colleague. So she ended up off as well. Side note, I'm really poor at biology and didn't realise people could catch infections. In fact, it's something that still gets talked about today because it's the only time I've ever taken off work in 8 years of working there. I was bedbound for quite a while there with this terrible fever and this horrible throat infection that had got onto my chest so that I couldn't really walk around anywhere. And so yeah, in 2019, I did read a lot in February because I was stuck in bed, because I couldn't go anywhere. So I was listening to audiobooks and I was reading books because I could do bugger all. So let's see. I read 19 books in February 2019 because I was in bed. But for some reason, I've been holding this to such esteem. So forgetting that year, I have recognised something. To go back to the original point of this video, that my reading seems to come in waves, and there is a pattern to it. And the pattern seems to be that I start the year in January reading tons, reading in every spare moment I have, avoiding YouTube, avoiding the internet, and avoiding friends even, and just staying at home, squirreled away, reading. Then in February, I start coming out of this hibernation and I slow down my reading and I just pick up books here and there. When I recognised that my reading happens in waves and every year there seems to be a general pattern to my reading, it felt like a weight had been lifted. I am not going to lie. It's like growing more self-aware of yourself, or myself. Growing more self-aware made me feel kinder to myself because I was able to recognise that there is a pattern to my reading. I wondered whether it also comes to do with seasons, or whether it's a monthly thing or whether it's a seasonal thing. I don't know what affects my reading or what makes me make this decision to read as much when I do. It's like, if I think about March last year, that was the time when I decided that I didn't want to do anything but read for the final week of March. And so I just got through about 10 books in 1 week because I just sat on the settee downstairs. I'd go for walks with my sister in the morning, or I'd go for a walk on my own. I would get home, I would shower, and then I would sit down in the chair and just read for the rest of the day because I was like, well, I've done my 10,000 steps now, you're all buggered, or get yourself sorted. I don't want to be part of this. Shall we try and bring this round to ask a question, or shall we just say that we've recognised that sometimes it's not a reading slump. Sometimes it's not about our sadness. It's just that we're a bit seasonal. Even our moods are a bit seasonal. And for me, January and February, I'm unsociable. January, February, I just want to spend my time, any spare time, in my bedroom, dreaming of being a full-time author so that I never have to socialise with anybody ever again unless it's on my terms. Then we enter into the spring months. And the spring months, I'm a bit like, I'm slowly growing more sociable again. I want to be sat outside, not with anybody. Again, still unsociable, but the reading starts to happen again. What we're reading changes as well. In spring and summer, I'm more likely to be heading towards the more depressing books. It's fine. I don't mind reading about, well, frankly, this last few months of reading nothing but death, I think this summer I might change my mind. But mostly in summer, The Eighth Life by Nino Hartshvili is my biggest memory of spring last year, I'm not going to lie. And if I could get everyone in the world to read this book, I would. I'm even planning on buying myself a paperback copy because this is just long. Let's cut this video here. Let me leave you with the question of, I'm quite happy now that I've recognised that my reading comes in waves and that I don't have to force it. That reading is something that I do for pleasure, and whilst I have made something of the career reviewing books and discussing them on this channel, I'm under no obligation to do that. Nobody's here forcing my arm up my back saying you need to read this, you need to read this now. Reading will happen as and when. It'll happen according to how I'm feeling, apparently, at a certain time of year. It's just who I am. I'll read what I like, when I like. And it took looking back at what old Charlie had been up to, young Charlie, past Charlie, him who came before, had been up to properly stop me from being so in my head about the fact that I wasn't getting much reading done. Have you noticed any patterns in your reading? Is there a time of year when you notice you don't read as much? Again, just let me know in the comments. Any of your thoughts. Let me know what you had for breakfast. Did you have jam? I don't like jam myself, but apparently a lot of people use that nowadays. I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was sheer boredom. And until next time, that is all.